Welcome back to the podcast. I am your co-host, Keoni McKeague, and with me, as always, are my longtime friends and co-hosts, Nolan, Tcheng, and Shirai. Say what's up to the pod, boys.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us
What up?
today.
What up?
We're going to go ahead and get the ball rolling on today's episode of After the Buzzer. We're going to break down games 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors, as well as some of the trade and free agency buzz around the league. So, Jared, I'm going to swing it over to you first. No particular order. If you'd like to start with the Warriors, you'd like to start with the Celtics. What did you see in games 1 and 2? Obviously, they're now 1-1 apiece. Actually, you know what? Let's just start with game 1. What did you see from the Boston Celtics that they were able to do in game 1 against the Warriors?
In game one, I mean, we talked about it going into this. It was kind of the depth of who was going to actually show up. I think we'll go more in depth into it as far as like Derek White being one of the biggest factors of even both games, but as far as game one goes. Um, and I think in game one, the biggest thing to me was Steph went off for 21 in the first quarter. Him going off for 21 in the first quarter and then kind of going semi-silent, I guess you would say, for his standards, and scoring only 13 for the rest of the game, which is the next three quarters. It's kind of big, and that shows just to how great Boston did through that first game. It was definitely a game of adjustments, and at the end, I would say Boston just was they looked more locked in that sense of that's why they ended up running way with the first game. But it's everything that I was hoping it to be. We said this is a finals that we would want to see, like that
Mm-hmm.
we're interested to watch. Not like how you said last year, like you didn't want to watch that. I mean, I didn't. I don't even think I think I watched maybe one game last year and just followed like the stat lines and the score lines. But
Mm-hmm.
this game was very much everything that we anticipated, and I would say it was kind of surprising. Tatum goes 3 of 17, scores 12 points, but he drops 13 assists. So I mean, he's still there, giving some kind of life and
Find a way.
offensive. Yeah, if he's not doing one thing, you're doing another thing that makes you better, right? If it's not falling for you on that day, then you sure as hell better make sure you're contributing in other ways. And it's not just on the offensive side of the ball. We know that Jason Tatum's a former Duke player, and like he can actually lock somebody up. And so to see him do it like someplace other than just the score line, it's actually really nice. So, I mean, it was a great first game in my opinion.
Definitely game two was more of, I want to say, their on-court rotational defense against the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
You only really had three guys in double figures, I think, for the Celtics. It
Mhm.
was Tatum, Brown, and then I think,
Derek
was it
White,
White? White, yeah,
yeah,
White once
White at
again showed
12.
up a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny because based off of how Jared mentioned it, Tatum did go kind of cold in game one, but if you look at their overall box score, the Celtics played their normal team ball, and they
Mhm.
did exactly that. But game two, obviously, you could see there was a big old struggle from everyone outside of the main two starters, as well as, and then White. Um, so I think mainly it was just Warriors being able to kind of pick up their defense and rotations on the court, see who they needed to cover, when they needed to cover. Um, but yeah, I think that's really the main thing I took away from game two. Warriors definitely had kind of a similar spreading output, scoring wise, along their team. Not a lot of guys in double figures, but everyone who stepped on the court contributed in their own little way as they went
Mm-hmm.
along. Otto Porter Jr. has been showing up pretty well, and we expected him to be that kind of difference maker at some point.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that we weren't just kind of saying cannon fodder, and he really was on the court producing in prolifer peripheral stats. Um, but yeah, that's it. I think the main split that they have right now is very apparent for why each team won each game, and I'm excited to see how Game 3 goes. If you're a Warriors
Yeah.
fans, you understand exactly. Draymond is the guy you hate playing against, but you love having on your team. And when he
Yep.
does it this way, you gotta, you know, that's where the cards fall. So that's I'm just saying that's exactly what Draymond is. But yeah, I don't think he's a detriment yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm in complete agreement with you, both of you. I think we're all in agreement that he's not necessarily a detriment, but he will be a detriment if he gets himself kicked out of the games 4 or 5. You know what I mean? When we get to that part of the series, because really, if they're missing him, That's a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal when the Cavs went up. It's going to be a big deal in this series as well. So if they lose him, I mean, he's the fulcrum for this team. And like you said, Steph Curry does a lot of great things, but if he has to do more, I think that'll end up costing them. So just curious what your thoughts are on this specific thought. A lot of guys are talking about whether or not, well, I guess it's based on comments that Steph Curry made that he says he is in his prime currently. So, how do you feel? Do you think that Steph Curry is still in his prime? Do you think that his prime may have been, a few years back when the Warriors were on that ridiculous run with KD and prior to that as well? Or is he just in his elongated prime, as LeBron fans like to say about LeBron as well?
I like how you add that last part in.
Yeah,
No,
I'm just saying it is a thought
I mean
that has been
it
talked
is
about a
thought.
lot lately. Hmm.
Um, I would say he's at the end of his prime, like into this like next, maybe like the next year or so, because all his career he's been banging through injuries. The older you get, that we talked about it, right? The older you get, the more it takes a toll on your body. Not able to do the same thing. So he'll be a great shooter, but does he factor the game as much as he did in those past years? I know you had a healthy Clay. I know you had KD. You know you had Draymond. I say Draymond in his a little more like prime years in a sense as well,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
when you have that kind of like following with you and that kind of support system, it's easy to be looked at as I mean, he's still one of the best three options of that team, if not the best. You know what I mean? And so it's hard to say like when he was actually in his prime because he never really had to carry a team in per se. Like when
Ooh,
LeBron had to
shots
carry a
fired.
team,
Bang,
when
bang,
LeBron
bang,
had to
bang.
carry a team, you kind of knew when it was happening. I mean,
Yeah.
he goes to the playoffs with that Cavs team. Wait, what do we say? Delonte
This
West,
isn't this isn't about
Dragic,
LeBron,
right? No,
Jared.
but it's
This is
about
about
carrying a team. And so when you're carrying a team, it's easier to tell when you're in your prime. I think the way Steph plays, though, and the way he doesn't always have to have the ball in his hand, he could be in his prime for a long period of time as long as
Yeah.
he has that Draymond, that other point guard, or like the Clay that kind of takes that pressure off of him of having to score 40 a night.
Speaking of Steph Curry's half court shooting, Nolan, I'm gonna swing it to you this question. Do you think that Jordan Poole has officially arrived, or is this like I like to preface it, is this just an outlier year that Jordan Poole is having um right now, or do you think that he's for real? Do you think he's a legit player, like
Um,
somebody that you're gonna try to there other teams are gonna try to sign in the next couple of years to be that guy?
I don't think he's arrived yet.
Hmm.
Um, he had an underwhelming game one and then had some big highlights in game two. I don't think overall he's played great as a in the first two matchups. Um, and we definitely kind of see in the previous series sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. If you want to be that guy and say that he's arrived, he has to be able to consistently show up, especially when it's like the finals or playoff contention or playoff conference finals, because
Hmm.
it's not so much you have a bad game, you come back maybe the next game or the game after that. You don't you have a pretty much set amount of time that you have left, given if you win or lose a game when it comes to the playoffs. And if he's not going to show up every single time and only show up, I don't want to, you know, kind of put him down. But if he's going to show up when they're already up, it's kind of like, okay, so you're just adding wood to the fire. You're not really
Hmm.
igniting the spark. You're just kind of, oh, here, yeah, we'll make sure it keeps burning hotter and
Where
hotter.
is that when you're in a slump, basically?
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
make sure that if you're the ones fighting back, it's apparent that you're the reason why the team is fighting back.
Hmm.
And I don't think he's shown that yet. I think he still has a lot of growth to do. But granted, what's his third year?
Is it his
I think
second?
his second year. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's
I
the
mean,
second
I'm
year, I
not I'm
believe.
not saying that everyone who enters the league needs to be able to turn it on right away, but he's given enough where he deserves to obviously be in that rotation on any contending team. But I
Hmm.
don't think you can say right now that he has arrived and that he's going to be a hot market player just yet.
For myself, I'm looking at this list and I'm kind of thinking, one, what is the criteria for this? Because I don't think Jordan Poole has done anything outside of scoring, and even that he didn't do too well in game one. So I'm like, what is he doing outside of that? He's not a great defender. He's not really known as an assist guy. So I just don't understand why he's number two on this list. First of all, second, like you guys already mentioned, Derek White is a name that could be thrown up there. Draymond Green is definitely a name that should be thrown up there. I just think of the guys who are on the list, there are a few omissions that I'm kind of wondering, well, why the hell are they not on this list? And two, I mean, the ranking. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's like game one just didn't happen. All of a
Yeah.
sudden,
Mhm.
we're just forgetting the heroics of the Celtics who ended up taking game one after being down by what, 13, 20? I forgot what the actual or their deficit was, but they were down by a lot and it looked like it was over. And for them to have come back in the fourth quarter, I mean, I'm just saying this is, I don't know who made this list, but it's definitely not the list that they should be working off of. I'd be pretty upset if any of the other Warriors besides Steph Curry or Draymond ends up being the MVP for this series. I
Yeah.
think that this is something that needs to be fixed if they're really digging this deep into like who's going to get the top or who's going to get the Finals MVP award.
Yeah.
But yeah, as well. And that's all we got for today's episode of After the Buzzer. We thank you so much for joining us on the Poi and Soy podcast. We look forward to talking with you again on our next episode of After the Buzzer. Nolan, let the people know where they can find you.
You can find me at Nolan KYT, Nolan KYT on Twitter, Instagram, all the good stuff.
Jared?
And you can find me at Shirai, JSHIRAI, at Instagram, Twitch, and yeah.
Good
not
vibes and
gonna
love,
jump.
everybody.
Not gonna jump the Twitter one. Oh, I didn't even tell them my Twitch
Shit!
handle.
Sorry. Cut that out. Cut it out. Cut it.
But you can find me, Keoni McKeague, at Keoni, so it's KAYOHKNEE on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitched. It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy from all of us here at Poi and Soy.
Vibes and love, everybody.
Bang bang.
Shoots.